Assalamu alaikum and good morning and welcome to this first, the maiden State of the Economy debate series that Zira Times is going to host. We are delighted that we are going to have this debate and we are going to talk about the current business sentiment in Jammu and Kashmir. And we have come a long way, from a small idea that we're going to discuss economic issues, economic affairs of Jammu and Kashmir to actually conducting this program. We have come a long way. Today, this morning, we have a distinguished panel with us. I'll start with and introduce the panel to you. Dr. Kasba Nabi, who has been former Commissioner, Srinagar Municipal Corporation. He has also been Mission Director for Rural Livelihoods Mission. We have Shakil Kalandar Sahab, former President, Federation Chamber of Industries, Kashmir, who wears, in fact, many hats, a very active member, civil society member. We have on my left, Mr. Majid Wafai, who is the president of J&K Cold Storages Association and also an executive member of Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industries. And then we have also with us Inayat Jahangir, who is the bureau chief of Press Trust of India, PTI. So welcome everyone and thank you very much for joining us on this maiden debate on the state of the economy. So today we are going to talk about the current business environment. And I'm going to begin with Shakil Kalandar Saab. Shakil Kalandar Saab, there is a feeling in Kashmir region, in Jammu region, and also in Ladakh that the business sentiment is low. There is a slump, and that the economy is really not doing well. Is that really so? Can you please tell us your views on this?
Thank you, Arjun. You see, the business in Kashmir, particularly among the state of Jammu and Kashmir, it has been grim ever since the inception of militancy in 1989. And we have been, in fact, faced with lots and lots of problems for these 3 decades, almost 3 decades. In 1999, the government of the state had invited EDI Ahmedabad to look into the sickness among industry and trade. They came up with a report where they said that 87.13% of industrial units in the state of Jammu and Kashmir had turned sick because of various reasons, including the conflict, including the turmoil of today. Yeah, I'll come of this. I have not seen, during these 3 decades, I have not seen as grim a situation as it is now, insofar as the business is concerned. Post 2014, every policy of the government went wrong, and it has, in fact, it has shaken the confidence of the investor, both existing and prospective. I think we are in a debt trap. Most of the units, you'll find them in a debt trap, and it's very hard to get them out of that trap. First, it started with 2014 floods, and then we know that Prime Minister had visited several times and he had announced a package for all who suffered during these floods. But it ended up with 800 crores for the business. And we don't know what happened with that 800 crores also. Anyway, it could not help the revival. It could not help to, in fact, to give some solace to the suffering entrepreneurs. And then came the demonetization, followed by GST, and the business is like that. We are at the moment very grim position, grim situation of business, weakest in these three decades, which have been, I think I spoke out that these 3 decades have been very critical for the business in Kashmir. But this time, it is the weakest atmosphere insofar as the business is concerned.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shakil Saab, for that overview. Just one thing for our viewers. Those of the viewers who won't be able to watch this live on our social media channels right now, this recording, the recording of this conversation, of this discussion will also be uploaded on Ziraat Times website later in the day, and it will be also available on our YouTube channel. I'll now turn to Majid Wafai Saab. Being someone, who is in the thick of things, one as the president of the Cold Storages Association of Kashmir and also as an executive member of Kashmir Chamber of Industries, tell us, how do you see the situation? Is the situation really bad, or probably we tend to see it too pessimistically?
Thank you, Arjuman Saab, and first of all, let me congratulate you for having these small chit chats. And I am sure and hopeful that the policymakers must watch these discussions. And if they will not watch these discussions, they cannot act. They cannot, then the things cannot take a good turn. And I must tell you, the business sentiment in Kashmir particularly is very, very grim. And the worst part is that you are hearing from a person who is very enthusiastic. I always see things in positive way. And when I have certain reasons to tell you. In 1990, if you will see the credit portfolio of J&K Bank, it was very, very minuscule. And when you see it now, it's very, very, very huge. And on the top of that, when there was sentiment that we want to do business, I want to grow, my economy has to grow, they went to the bank. They thought that, okay, we have a chance that we should start approaching the banks, availing many facilities, and then start the business on a larger scale. And in the mid, what happened? 2014 broke the backbone of our economy.
You mean to say the flood situation?
Yes, flood situation. Yeah. Demonetization did not have any effect as per my understanding of the things.
Because it seems that most of our economy is actually conducted through the formal banking system.
Yes, exactly, you're right. And then what happened? 2016 happened. So these two events happened in a very short span of time. So normally we always wanted to create a longer milestone, 2010, then came 2016. So we had a 6-year gap between the first turmoil and the second turmoil. But in the meanwhile, we had 2014. I will cite one example of the bad business sentiment as of today. Recently, the government of Jammu and Kashmir announced this scheme wherein the defaulters, amnesty scheme in sales tax department. You will be surprised to know nobody is coming forward to avail that amnesty scheme. I had my own personal cases where I went, I inquired, and as a Kashmir Chamber of Commerce, we gave an advertisement in the local newspaper that government is saying as of now that this is the final amnesty scheme. You please come forward. If you had some technical issues, the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce is going to sort it out. And then nobody is coming forward. It is, and you can see that as if the businessmen have just given up. They don't see a future of business. So that's why I said in 1990, the credit exposure of J&K Bank, because that's a main financial institution which is lending to the businesses in this part of the world, was very small. And when you talk about 2014, it was quite fat. They had lended to the people. And now on the top of 2014 and 16 and the current political turmoil, this is paying toll on the existing business, new businesses, definitely. So, and I'm just coming to this question about the sentiment part. Then we can discuss later on what are the remedies part. I'm saying the sentiment is bad with this small example. Small example, I'm repeating that the amnesty scheme is, what is that amnesty scheme? Somebody had a principal principal amount outstanding of the government to the tune of 10,000 rupees, for example. And on the top of it, from past 5, 10, 12, 15 years, it has accumulated to 2 lakh, 3 lakh rupees. Right now, government is telling you that in 3 years, you pay me these 10,000 only. I will clear all your bills. I will clear your slate. You will have sound sleep at home. You will not be thinking that tomorrow government is going to seize my property and recover that. So when the people have resorted to this level, that they don't come forward. So why? Then we little bit scratched on it. Why this is it? The people said that we don't have money to pay the first installment. So how can we avail it? So as far as sentiment is concerned, the sentiment is very, very weak and things are in a very bad shape unless and until. So regarding the solution, we'll talk later.
We'll talk about that
I
later.
I have told you the sentiment is weak with reasons. What we see on the ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'll turn to you, Dr. Kasba Sahab. Rural economy is important in Jammu and Kashmir. About 70% of our population resides in rural areas. And then a significant component of our GDP is actually produced in our rural areas as well, especially in sectors like agriculture, horticulture, fisheries, forestry, and so on. As someone who has worked in rural areas and someone who has been associated with efforts in promoting livelihoods and promoting economic well-being in rural areas, how do you see the situation right now?
Thank you very much, Arjun Saab. I think reasons are obvious. What I have seen through my association in the Rural Livelihood Mission project, I always find that the access to the credit is a big impediment. Over a period of time, we have relied in the last 3-4 decades primarily on JK Bank. And JK Bank has limitations and its portfolio of NPAs is almost bulging. You have other banks also, State Bank of India, PNB, HDFC. Now, they would only invest in areas where they find it is lucrative for them. They don't, priority sector is totally unrepresented. Agriculture, I tell you, even JK Bank was also initially very shy. Now they had some change of heart. They started promoting Kisan credit cards and all that. But primarily the priority sectors, especially horticulture and agriculture, credit availability to the priority sectors and to the handicrafts is very minimal. And in fact, this is going to drive your economy. And if you look at tourism comes after your horticulture, agriculture and handicrafts. Now, if you ignore these sectors, the results are obvious. There will be slump. There will be slump in the overall economic scenario. Now, you will have to diversify. JK Bank, yes, doing good job, but beyond JK Bank, you have to think of. Now, as far the priority sectors are concerned, now we have almost 9 cooperative banks. They are very liberally financing. They are very liberally financing agriculture sector in a big way, especially Kisan credit cards. Now, what is ailing cooperative banks is they don't get any government supports. And I think Baramulla Central Cooperative Bank, Anantnag Central Cooperative Bank and the Jammu Central Cooperative Bank, they are on the notice from RBI. They may face deregistration.
And then there
because
this proposal of amalgamation
absolutely.
of the cooperatives bank.
That has some legal implications. You have district structure, then you have the state structure. You will have to amend the laws. Then if you are to amalgamate the district banks, you have a state structure, you have a tertiary, you have a secondary structure, you have primary agricultural cooperatives. Now you will have to at the ground level. I think Honorable Mufti Sahab had a wonderful understanding of the primary credit institutions. Primary credit cooperatives in Gujarat, in Maharashtra, even down south also, doing a wonderful job. We started reviving those. But I think need of the hour is to revive the primary agricultural cooperative societies and the credit structure. SHGs are showing a huge hope in reviving your economy. And if you see the almost 20,000 SHGs are operating, and I have seen stories which are quite heartwarming that women coming out of the poverty, women really feeling empowered, running families, supporting husbands, supporting their parents. That in a big way has to come. But I think the issue with our economy is ailing that you have a very limited credit availability unless and until you diversify, you expand it. And if you rely on the government sources, now for example, incentives and subsidies, you will have to look at the kitty with the government. I think government 80,000 crores. If you look at it, where from this money is coming, 60% comes from the government of India. 20%, 21% is our resource.
We'll talk about that issue.
And I
later.
think that's thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's the credit issue is important because when we look at the targets set by the banks every year, we are not able to realize the credit targets. And in the priority sectors, there are issues of recovery of the loans. There are issues of meeting certain conditions of certain schemes, both state schemes and the centrally sponsored schemes as well. Consequently, except for the J&K Bank, which is doing relatively well, some other banks are really not able to provide the kind of credit that must go to the priority sector. I'll turn to Inayat Jahangir. Post GST and also post demonetization, there was a general slump overall in the economy in India. And there was slump in the industrial sector, in the services sector, in real estate particularly. And then things seem to be bouncing back as well. But is that so? Do we see a situation of the economy bouncing back in Jammu and Kashmir?
Thank you, Arjumand. I think let me start with like journalist. Coming to the question you asked about GST and demonetization, I think Jammu and Kashmir was the worst hit by these two moves taken by the central government. We don't have a formal economy. Our formal economy, that is the economy that takes place through banking system, is very limited. Probably the KCCI members and FCIK members, they might be going through that channel. But the large unorganized sector, the rediwalas, the shopkeepers who are not even registered with the sales tax department, they conducted their business in cash before the demonetization.
But despite that, the fact remains that Jammu and Kashmir was one of the least affected because of the demonetization.
Because it is the volume. The volume of cash in J&K economy was not that big as in other, because we always tend to think, we try to compare ourselves with Delhi. The Delhi has a floating population of 1.5 crores a day and our total population is 1.25 crores of the state. So you can't compare Srinagar city with a population of 12 to 15 lakh persons to a city like Delhi where the daily population can fluctuate between 2.5 crores to 4 crores. Because a lot of people from other places come in.
That's a real situation. We see inflation really bad in Jammu and Kashmir right now. Talking about GST, Shakil Saab, it seems clear that a lot of industries, including those industries which were exempt from certain taxations, the sales tax and also the central excise in Jammu and Kashmir, they seem to be struggling right now. One, that they are required to pay taxes on their products, on their exports and imports, which they were not supposed to pay earlier. And then there is also something that the government has assured these industries that there will be a refund for whatever taxes they are paying right now and that they will not really be required to pay taxes later. But it seems that for now, GST has really played the spoil sport. But then we also learn from some industrialists who say that the introduction of GST has in fact led to some positive impact on certain sectors of the economy. How do you see the application or the extension of GST to Jammu and Kashmir?
You see, Arjumand, there are many views in the market about GST, but it's a damn fact that our fiscal autonomy has been eroded because of introduction of this GST. That's the first point. Second, Inayat has told you that ours is an informal economy as it is elsewhere in the mainland India, and 86% of our economy is informal. So there has been some impact of this GST, very negative impact from this implication of this GST. Third part is that our industry was protected on several counts. One is that tax exemptions were there. These were afforded pre-GST regime, and these have been automatically taken away. Not only that, you see, 1,200 goods and 500 services have been brought under the ambit of GST. We would not tax our services except for a few services like our contracts and few more services here. Rest all of the services were exempted. Likewise, the industry was exempted from payment of VAT pre-GST regime. Now you have to pay it. Government has announced a bizarre, scheme where they said that GST part, the state GST part, shall be reimbursed to the local units after availing the input credit. That means the what do you call that? The addition. We pay GST once we purchase goods from outside. That's the huge chunk because raw material has to be purchased. Then it comes and value addition is in some percentage, say 20%. In certain cases, it is 7%, but it varies 7% to 100% value addition. And on this value addition, again, there is a CGST component and SGST component. They say that we will reimburse this SGST component after you avail all of the input credit. That means whatever SGST they have recovered from us during our purchases of raw material will not be reimbursed to us. In certain cases, it is a meager amount. I'll give an example to you. We have steel rolling mills, like they have what do you call this conversion cost is about 8%. For every 100 rupees of raw material, they will charge 8 rupees or 10 rupees at the maximum as value addition. So on this value, they will get reimbursement for this 10%, 10 rupees. And it's a meager. It doesn't matter that you have already recovered 97% and it doesn't matter, you will reimburse 3% of it. So government shall have to come up with a solution. Industry needs some sort of concessions and protection to compete with their counterparts in the mainland. You have opened up the borders for goods and any item can be brought in. Again, it's the same GST. Earlier, you would protect some of the industries by imposing entry tax also. And you need it. Nehru did it. When Indian economy had to be grown, the imposition of taxes, custom duties were about 300%, 400%. Ambassador would never have been sold had there not been 400%, 300% custom duties.
Duty on the cost.
Yeah. So, but they were thoughtful of it that we have to provide and afford some sort of protection to the local industry to grow.
Yeah.
And this protection has been taken away. And the result is that now you see goods coming from other areas and the local industry, it is crumbling.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I'll turn to Kasba Saab, and we'll talk about the industrial policy and also the industrial packages which was introduced to Jammu and Kashmir in 2002, along with some other hilly states as well. There was some kind of a review for the industrial package recently, which has been implemented here since 2002, and now since it has been extended for another 10 years to 2027. There are a lot of questions. The questions are that the kind of concessions and the incentives being provided to the industry in Jammu and Kashmir seem to be unsustainable. That one, despite the input of the state into these incentives, we are not really able to generate corresponding number of jobs, nor we are able to enhance the competitiveness of these industries vis-a-vis those industries outside the state. And there are already questions being raised in different quarters whether Jammu and Kashmir state would really be able to continue these incentives. What do you think about it? Do you think that we need to radically think about remodeling and restructuring our industrial packages intensives regime? or what needs to be done, or we need to continue in order to make sure that our industries are surviving in the face of the stiff competition from the outside?
Thank you much. I think this is a very important issue once you look at developing the industrial infrastructure and getting into the manufacturing of goods. Now, you will have to also look at the scenario that you are geographically at a very far end of the country. And you will have to incur huge costs on transportation. And not only the transportation in the sense that it has to reach your factory or the premises of the production unit. It has to also travel back almost the similar distance or a more distance for its marketing. So you will have to understand that the industries which are relevant in other parts of the country where raw material is available there, you will have to shift over to the industries where you will have no raw material to be imported from outside. And second thing is that, as Shakil Sahab rightly mentioned, you will have to provide a level playing field. Now, in fact, we talked about poultry industry long back. In fact, there was a very serious effort between 2003 and 2005 that for poultry production, you would impose a tax on import of birds, a very, very modest tax, because the entire industry in Punjab and Haryana and the western UP is producing huge poultry for Jammu and Kashmir. Now, we also thought of that giving support to the small poultry producers, 5 rupees a bird, for at least 5 years. That has to be done. Unless until you provide a level playing field, you can't have a big headway. Second thing is, as far the state government is concerned, that state apparatus is concerned, you will have to look at their physical power. The physical power is perhaps we are at the lowest ebb in the country. Now, you look at the budget, 80,000 crores. Out of 80,000 crores, 60,000 crores would come from the government of India. And 21,000 crores would come from the state resources. And 20% you have to raise. Even government is raising loans. Now, if you look at how you're spending it, now what is left? 36% for education, health, including your industrial policy. So what's left then? I think government itself doesn't have the power to drive industry or drive incentives. Whatsoever promises have been made in the industrial policy, unless until physical health of the government improves, tax base improves. I think GST has given a big hit to the government on account of the revenue collection. Now, on one side that our local revenue generation is poor. On the other side, that what we were generating out of our own resources, that has also taken a big hit because of GST. You'll have to look all those lines, please.
Yeah. In fact, Mani Saab, talking about, you earlier mentioned that, there are certain incentives available, but entrepreneurs are really not inclined in the current circumstances to actually take benefit of these. Talking about the industrial promotion package, we learn from industrialists and people who have ventured into business. They say that while there are incentives available on papers, but the disbursements actually happen in such a manner that they are not really disbursed in a timely and effective manner when it really matters the most for the businessman. And consequently,